They say if you hear her crying, it's already too late. A woman in white wanders riverbanks at night, mourning children she can never hold again. Some say she steals wandering souls. Others believe she is punishment incarnate. But tonight, on episode 1 of Faith and Folklore, we ask a different question. What if La Llorona is not just a ghost story, but a warning about grief, sin, repentance, and perhaps even purgatory? Before we discuss theology, you have to hear the story, because La Llorona isn't just folklore, she's a tragedy. They say, long ago, there was a beautiful woman named Maria. In some tellings, she was poor and breathtakingly beautiful. In others, she came from wealth. But nearly every version agrees on one thing. She fell deeply in love with a man. A handsome man, charismatic and wealthy. For a time, life seemed perfect. But eventually, the man had changed. Some stories say he abandoned Maria. Others say he became cruel. One of the darkest versions says he only valued the children when it made him look respectable. Maria's heartbreak turned into rage. Grief became obsession, and one terrible night, standing beside a river, she drowned her children. The moment the water stilled, she realized what she had done. The rage vanished, and horror took its place. As she searched the river, she wept until grief consumed her. In many versions of the story, Maria does die shortly after. In some versions, she drowns herself. Sometimes it's from despair. Other times it was divine judgment. And when she reaches the gates of heaven, she is told, you cannot enter the gates of heaven until you find your children. So she wanders forever, weeping, searching rivers, calling into the darkness, oh my children. And people say, if you hear her cry close to you, she is actually far away. But if you hear her cry far away, it's already too late. This story is older than what some people realize. Some scholars actually trace elements of La Llorona back to pre-colonial legends in Mexico, including stories connected to the mourning spirits described during the time of the Aztec Empire. Others believe the modern version developed during the colonial period as indigenous beliefs mixed with Catholic ideas of sin, repentance, and the afterlife. Spanish colonialization of the Americas during the time. And then over time, La Llorona became a ghost story. It became more than a ghost story. She became a warning to children not to wander at night, a cautionary tale about grief and rage, a symbol of abandonment and maternal sorrow, and in some communities, a very real spirit people swear they encountered near rivers. And this is where the folklore actually gets really fascinating. And for me, guys, yes, I have heard La Llorona before. I have. We'll do a story time later, but yes, yeah. This is where the folklore gets fascinating, because whether people believe in La Llorona or not, stories survive because they carry fears that we ourselves recognize. We recognize loss, regret, fear of abandonment, and rage. We recognize all of that, the consequences of our choices, the terror of wanting forgiveness after something irreversible. And this is where we're going to go into the Catholic lens. Is this purgatory? Now, this is where things get really interesting, at least for me. Because when Catholics hear the story of La Llorona, there's something strangely familiar in it. It's not the ghost part, it's the suffering. Because in Catholic teachings, purgatory is not hell. It is not eternal punishment. It is a state of purification for souls destined for heaven who still need healing and purification from the effects of sin. And La Llorona's story mirrors something spiritually recognizable, a soul consumed by remorse, and a person unable to let go of what they've done, a longing for reconciliation and a search for peace. Now, to be very clear, the church does not teach that ghosts wander rivers searching for redemption. And La Llorona is folklore, not doctrine. However, guys, but folklore often reflects theological anxieties people already hold. And in deeply Catholic churches or cultures, stories about repentance, suffering, wandering souls, and mercy naturally appear. So when people told stories about the woman endlessly grieving her children, were they telling a ghost story? Or expressing fears about guilt or justice? And whether mercy is still possible after terrible mistakes. And we, as Catholics, especially as Christians, all know that yes, mercy is still possible after terrible mistakes. You just have to look at the story between Peter and Judah. Peter denied Christ 3 times, but asked and begged for forgiveness. Judah betrayed Jesus, instead took his own life because he was holding on to too much pride and guilt. One became the Pope, the very first Pope of the Catholic faith. The other is a known demon that torments people. And then we have the best saints. So these are the best saints, guys, for the discussion, for this next discussion. We got Saint Monica. I love Saint Monica. She was actually she was actually a choice for being one of my patron saints. Then we have Saint Mary Magdalene. Never thought to choose her. I'll get into personal saints in a bit, but these saints feel deeply connected to the themes behind La Llorona. We have Saint Monica, the saint of grieving mothers. Saint Monica spent years weeping and praying for her son, Augustine, who's my boy, who had abandoned the faith and lived recklessly. That is putting that lightly. You know who St. Augustine is? That's putting that lightly. Her tears became legendary, but unlike La Llorona, Monica's grief became prayer. And eventually her son returned to God. Same sorrow, very different situations and destinies. Then we have Saint Mary Magdalene, a powerful saint for repentance, someone transformed after sin and suffering. Her story reminds us that no one is beyond redemption, just like I said with Saint Peter. And then we have Saint Dymphna. I probably butchered that name. I will butcher some of these names. Saint Dymphna for conversions about grief, despair, trauma, and emotional suffering. Because honestly, part of the tragedy of La Llorona is watching grief become destruction. She is seeing her husband that she fell in love with choose cruelty, choose abandoning her, leaving her for other women. She's heartbroken. She has this grief that is now just turning to destruction, and it's self-destruction. And then we have Saint Gertrude the Great. One of the strongest saints to bring into the purgatory conversation. She's often associated with prayers for souls in purgatory and God's mercy for the dead. That's who you can go to for Saint Gertrude whenever you really need to pray for the souls in purgatory. She is the saint for that. And then we have Our Lady of Sorrows. And this one is the most powerful comparison. A grieving mother, deep suffering, unimaginable sorrow, but sorrow transformed into love instead of despair. So, what is La Llorona? A ghost? A warning? A mother trapped in internal grief? Or a reflection of something deeply human? Our fear of regret and our desperate hope for mercy. Folklore survives because it speaks to what haunts us. And maybe that's why stories like this never really disappear. They remind us that grief can either consume us or transform us. But I want to know what you think. Do you think La Llorona is just folklore, a spiritual warning, or something stranger? Tell me in the comments. And if there's another legend you want covered in faith and folklore, let me know. Stay safe, and maybe avoid rivers after dark. Stay sacred, stay scary, and if you made it this far into the video, hit that subscribbles button, hit that like, hit that share, because we're getting back into the root of things. Friday, we're dropping the Sacred and the Scary, episode 4, I believe, which is Greylock tapes, and then every Monday I'll be dropping a folklore as well. So please stay tuned, and have a wonderful day, and God bless.